Jesus explains the creation story, from the night into the light. Since your brother so eagerly wishes to reach from the night into the light, as he puts it, I do intend to grant him this request and show him the way, which, in truth, he has been walking already for quite some time, although he is not wholly aware of everything that he has been told and taught upon this path. Now behold, my dear son, you have been working in my garden for a long time now, and have been spreading the seed undauntedly throughout the entire world. You see, you have already come across many things, and you have taken them in. However, you have not understood it as thoroughly as I wanted, which is why this question contained within your most recent letter is again proof that you have not understood my spirits, nor the worlds, nor the creation of men in their deepest meaning. In order to make all of this clear to you, in regards to what you ask of me now, I do not have to tell you anything new. Instead, I only need to explain in more detail what has already been given by me in myriads of words, and to remind you of forgotten passages, which in turn will guide you out of the labyrinth, so you might transition from the night into the light. With that said, listen now. You will remember that even in the household of God, which deals with the creation of the spirits and the material world, I have already explained that first the spirits were created, and among them the greatest of all, Satana, or Lucifer, the latter of which, however, instead of being a light bearer, together with his companions fell away from me, becoming a bearer and representative of darkness. You will also recall that, in order to prepare a way for these fallen spirits to return to me, I created the material world. There, I clothed them in matter and compelled them to undergo the school of humility and self-abnegation once again, although involuntarily. You will also remember that, after the path of development has been indicated in this way, the spirits, starting from the finest mass and traveling all the way up to man, the last stage of the material creation, they may continue to rise and purify themselves. However, within man, as you mentioned it, 3 days before his birth, a vesicle of the finest and most solid soul substance encloses the spirit that had once become evil. At the center of the spirit, the divine spark of love itself has still its seat, and this spark is the trigger that grants the evil spirit the possibility of reforming itself into something good, and even impels it to do so. Look, if you consider the implication of this prediction just a little, the following question must arise within you. If the spirit is placed into this vesicle merely 3 days before birth, then who is forming the body of the child up until that point? Who is responsible for its inner and outer form, as well as its constitution as a human being, so that at least all things necessary to create a human being, according to my vision, would already be present? Behold, here I must answer you. Have you forgotten that all fallen spirits bound within matter constitute matter itself? So, who forms the child, starting from the embryo right up until 3 days before birth? Behold, it is the nameless spirit parcels, which, as a spiritual process directed by the mother soul, carry out the development, construction, and furnishing of the child's body, just as they do in plants, or any other material product for that matter, always according to its respective species. The child, before it is born, possesses a vegetative life, and no intellectual life nor consciousness. It is developed by the spirits according to its species, just like every other animal, be it in a womb or in an egg. However, as soon as the egress from this inner world draws near, and the vegetative life of the child is no longer sufficient, the great step must be taken, which distinguishes man from the animal. For the continued development of the child, the actual awakener and developer is placed into the aforementioned vesicle, as a spark of that great spirit, which must lead the newly born child, after coming forth from the darkness of the mother's womb, from the night into the light, as you have put it, my son. This spark of the fallen great spirit of light contains, however, certain tendencies of its origin. Remember, the path of men is always the same, namely to advance from the bad to the good. Just as within the fallen great spirit, only my spark of love existed, which was rejected and abused by him. Likewise does this ray of my love, which can never be destroyed, exist within this small spark of the once fallen spirit that will inhabit the newly formed child. Upon the child's separation from the life of the mother, it begins its own existence, where, as was the case with the great Lucifer, the struggle between good and evil begins. The struggle between the two universally opposing principles and tendencies. This way, the purpose of life and the spiritual progress is secured, from the night into the light. This is how it is, and the world must preserve itself. However, the creation of the first man, Adam, did quite naturally not occur in the same manner as all subsequent births. The first plant, the first animal, etc., were without seed, without birth, and they had to emerge directly from my hands, as was the case with man as well. He too directly emerged from my hand. He was created in my image. During this period of creation, he possessed a different constitution, a different form, as well as different spiritual faculties. He was destined for a longer life, if he would live according to his destiny. I have preordained this for all spirits, including Lucifer or Satana, as a should, not as a must. This solitary life of the first man was not conditioned though, and he was not meant to remain alone. Within my own self resided the condition to give him another being to accompany him, a being that is supposed to feel and think with him. Thereby, they would share their sorrow and joy, and they would walk the path of life and trials together. Even I myself did not want to live alone. I did not want to be alone, merely aware of my own power. That is why I created a myriad of beings, which would then delight in my creations, and they would double my joy of being the creator. Thus, I created the spirits, great images in my likeness, worthy of me. And what happened to the greatest of them all? You know it. He fell. He fell away from me. And what happened to man? He fell as well. He fell away from me. Both Lucifer and man did not respect the law of love. They wanted to go their own way, as free beings. And so, the law of love had to lead along other ways, but still to the same collective goal. Satan, or Lucifer, transformed his love into hatred, cockiness, and pride. Man's spiritual qualities were of Luciferian origin. In order to alleviate man on one side, but also to offer him ample opportunity to further train and strengthen his spiritual faculties and abilities, thereby becoming more like me, I removed from man this perverted love called self-love, which inclined more towards evil than good, and placed it at his side as a companion and procreator of his race and species. That is how the woman was created, endowed with all the physical and inner charms I had once placed into Satana, to shine as a beacon of eternal love within creation. And so, the woman, now independent, was to fight her own self-love towards the man as well, to obey him and to lighten the burden of his life. The only thing I withheld from man created in my own image, making it the cornerstone of the entire spiritual world edifice, was sensual procreation. This should not be done in the manner the animals do it, but rather as the spiritual beings go about it, as is the case, for example, with the people living on Saturn. See the volume Saturn. However, I gave man his free will. The principle of Lucifer placed into him, the principle of opposition, triumphed, which I knew well before it happened, and I already had ordained everything in advance. But I wanted that man and the spirits never blame me, but rather only themselves, if their desired happiness was not reached on the path they chose to go with their free will. Satana used these qualities she placed into man to seduce him, and made him partly complicit in her own fall, in order to always persistently behave, together with her fallen spirits, as the antithesis of me. And so the world, together with all its institutions, was changed, so that Lucifer's, or Satana's, move against me would be turned into the greatest advantage to my spiritual construction, and in such a way that the fallen spirits must now contribute all the more to the advancement of my kingdom, facilitating their own return in the process. I, as a free God, creating free beings, could not take this freedom from them. But when Satana finally, through the charms of women and the ambition of men, attempted to apostatize mankind gradually from me, I had to restrain the germ of evil by the partial annihilation of the human race through the flood of sins. I had to remind men once again that I alone am the Lord, and that Satan is and will forever remain merely my servant. Today, man does not want to know anything about a flood of sins, because this humanity, estranged from God, also does not want to know the word sin anymore, and it writes just the flood, or Noah's flood. However, great floods happen often, but the flood of sins happened only once, and this is the flood referred to in this text. Read also the Household of God, Volume 3. Afterwards, when Satan started to make promises to return to me, and at least in appearance letting go of his machinations, I put him to the final test. I decided to expose myself to his temptations in human form, in order to convince him and to prove once and for all that all his efforts are in vain, that all fighting against my will and my holy laws is for nothing. I became man, and under Satan's constant influence, I preached and taught my gentle teachings. Incidentally, Satan tempted men into the most foolish and impudent sin, namely, that they should kill their Creator and Lord. And they did. However, unbeknownst to them, by killing the body of their Lord, they crowned the greatest work, which I, as God, had long ago predestined and foreseen, to show my spirits and people by example what they did want to believe by words. Today, the world once more pushes its satanic activities so far that, with the help of Satan himself, it wishes to wipe out all divine seed. But Satan knows my patience. He knows about my upcoming return to this earth in particular. He knows that I did not let myself be crucified for nothing 1,000 and some years ago. He knows that I do not plan on leaving my work unfinished. And so, he still does everything in his power to rob men of all that is good and blessed, driving them into material misery, which is, however, exactly where my kingdom will shine the most, as the last lifeline. Once again, not his plan, but my great work of peace will be crowned. For the great love will take all the lost ones back into its arms. Whatever evil they believe to have done and committed against me, my love will repay them with good deeds and offer them the hand of forgiveness. That is when all men will come to understand that they have not played the greatest and worst mischief on me, but only on themselves. That will be my triumph. The very love which once created the first spirits and beings will once again press these lost beings with the same love against the Father's heart. And Lucifer, ultimately remaining empty-handed, will have to admit that he, like men, has rather harmed himself, not me. This is the triumph of truth and love, and the wisdom connected with it. That out of the surrender of one's own will, out of all the freely exercised evil or good, the final result is still always the same, namely the step from the night into the light. My son, do you now understand my creation of spirits, of Adam, my incarnation, and your own salvation? Behold, my child, this is how you must interpret these things. There lies infinity within all my words, and should you sometimes have doubts, take a word from me. With some contemplation and assistance on my part, you will soon be driven from the night into the light, where you will always see your loving Father with outstretched arms, calling out to you and all others, "Come here, all of you who are heavy laden, that I may take away your burden and reinvigorate you." Amen.